The call came at 2:17 p.m. Mrs. Olivia Bennett? There's been an accident. Your husband Michael didn't make it. Your daughter Hannah is in critical condition. My world collapsed in seconds. Through blinding tears, I called my parents. Michael's dead and Hannah might not survive, I sobbed. Their response? We're at Connor's birthday party right now. Can this wait? 30 days later, when they heard about the settlement money, suddenly they had time. They wanted half. I showed them what real loss looks like. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and hit subscribe to follow my journey through grief, betrayal, and eventually, healing. Before that horrific Tuesday afternoon changed everything, Michael and I had built what I thought was a perfect life. We met during our junior year at Northwestern University. I was studying finance, staying up late in the library when this tall, smiling architecture student asked if he could share my table. Michael Bennett had the kindest brown eyes I'd ever seen and a laugh that made everyone around him smile. After graduation, he pursued civil engineering while I became a financial analyst at a respected firm in Chicago. Our wedding came 3 years later, a beautiful October ceremony with golden leaves swirling around us as we said our vows. We bought our first home a year after that, a charming 3-bedroom colonial with a backyard perfect for the family we dreamed of building. But life had other plans. For years of fertility treatments, 3 miscarriages, and countless tears later, we were about to give up when our miracle happened. Hannah Elizabeth Bennett arrived after a difficult pregnancy, weighing 6 pounds 2 ounces, with her father's brown eyes and my stubborn chin. From the moment we brought her home, Hannah became our universe. Michael would spend hours building elaborate blanket forts in the living room, complete with structural supports that he insisted were necessary for proper fort integrity. Every Sunday morning, the 3 of us had pancake competitions, creating increasingly ridiculous shapes and voting on whose creation was the most imaginative. Hannah's unicorn-shaped stack usually won, though Michael's attempt at the Sears Tower deserved honorable mention for ambition, if not execution. I treasured our evening routine the most. After dinner, we'd gather at the kitchen table for homework, art projects, or board games. Michael taught Hannah chess when she was just 6, and she stunned us both by beating him legitimately by age 8. She gets her strategic mind from you, Liv, he'd say with pride, though we both knew her competitive streak was all Michael. Throughout these happy years, my relationship with my parents remained complicated. Barbara and Richard Ward had always made their preference for my younger brother Connor obvious. When I graduated with honors from Northwestern, they attended but left early to help Connor move into his sophomore dorm. When I received a major promotion 3 years ago, they canceled our celebration dinner because Connor had tickets to a basketball game and needed a ride. I tried not to let it hurt. Michael would squeeze my hand under the table during family gatherings when my mother interrupted my stories to ask Connor about his latest girlfriend, or my father checked his watch while I explained my work. "We're your real family," Michael would whisper, nodding toward Hannah, who was usually drawing nearby. I believed him. The morning of the accident started like any other Tuesday. Michael made coffee while I packed Hannah's lunch. She was excited about her swimming competition that afternoon. "Mom, watch for me to do the backstroke flip turn like Coach Janet taught us," she said, demonstrating the motion with her arms at the breakfast table. "I wish I could be there, sweetie, but I have that quarterly review meeting," I apologized, zipping her lunch into her dolphin-shaped lunch bag. "Dad will record it for me, right?" Already planning my camera angles, Michael confirmed, kissing the top of my head as he passed. "I'm thinking wide shot for the race, then zoom in for the victory celebration." Hannah rolled her eyes, but smiled. "Dad, what if I don't win?" "Then I'll delete the evidence and we'll tell Mom you were robbed by biased judging," he winked, making us both laugh. Those were our last normal moments. Our last shared breakfast. The last time I heard Michael's laugh or saw Hannah's eye roll. The last ordinary morning before everything shattered. I kissed them both goodbye at 7:45 a.m. Michael would drop Hannah at school before heading to his construction site, then pick her up early for the swim meet. I headed to the office, my mind already on the presentation I'd be giving at 2 p.m. The meeting was going well. I was explaining our fourth quarter projections when my phone vibrated. I ignored it. It vibrated again. And again. When it buzzed a fourth time in 5 minutes, I apologized to the room and glanced at the screen. For calls from a number I didn't recognize. As I excused myself to step outside, it rang again. "Is this Olivia Bennett?" a serious voice asked. "This is Officer Martinez with Chicago PD. There's been an accident involving your husband and daughter." The world tilted. I grabbed the wall to stay upright. The next words would divide my life into before and after, though I didn't know it yet. "You need to come to Northwestern Memorial immediately. Your husband's vehicle was struck by another driver." I'm very sorry to tell you that Michael Bennett was pronounced dead at the scene. Your daughter Hannah is in critical condition. I don't remember dropping my phone. I don't remember my colleague Rachel finding me collapsed in the hallway. I don't remember her driving me to the hospital, though she later told me she ran red lights to get me there faster. The next clear memory I have is standing in the emergency department, screaming my husband's name as if volume alone could bring him back from wherever he had gone. The accident report painted a clinical picture of the worst day of my life. At 1:42 p.m., a red pickup truck driven by Thomas Wells, 46, ran a red light at the intersection of Madison and Halsted. His blood alcohol level was later measured at 0.21, nearly 3 times the legal limit. The truck struck the driver's side of Michael's silver Honda Civic at approximately 48 miles per hour. Michael died instantly from catastrophic head trauma. Hannah, secured in her booster seat on the passenger side, suffered a severe traumatic brain injury for broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a fractured femur. These facts were delivered to me by Officer Martinez in a quiet room off the emergency department. I couldn't process them. All I could think was that Michael had been taking Hannah to her swim meet. She had been so excited to show off her new flip turn. She'd never gotten the chance. Dr. Lawrence, a neurosurgeon with kind eyes and gray temples, explained Hannah's condition while using words that seemed to come from a foreign language. Intracranial pressure, induced coma, cranial monitoring, cerebral edema. I nodded as though I understood, but all I comprehended was that my 9-year-old daughter might never wake up. "Can I see my husband?" I asked when Dr. Lawrence finished explaining the surgery Hannah was undergoing. A social worker named Patricia led me to a different floor. She tried to prepare me, saying things about trauma and how Michael wouldn't look like himself. Nothing could have prepared me for seeing my vibrant, laughing husband motionless under harsh, fluorescent lights. His face was surprisingly peaceful but wrong somehow, empty of the animation that had made him Michael. I touched his hand. It was cold. That's when I finally broke, collapsing across his chest, begging him to wake up, to not leave us, to come back and help me because I couldn't do this alone. I don't know how long I stayed there. Eventually, Patricia gently guided me back to the surgical waiting area. Hannah was still in surgery. I sat alone, staring at my phone. I needed to call my parents. They needed to know. They needed to come. Barbara answered on the 4th ring, the sounds of celebration in the background. "Olivia? We're right in the middle of Connor's birthday lunch." "Mom," I could barely speak through my tears. "Michael's dead. There was an accident. Hannah's in surgery. I need you." There was a pause. "Oh my goodness, that's terrible." Her voice lowered slightly but maintained its composure. "We're at Rosetta's with all of Connor's friends. We've rented the whole back room. Can this wait until this evening? Connor's about to open his presents." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "My husband is dead, Mom. Your granddaughter might not survive the night." "I understand, dear, but we can't just leave right now. That would be rude to everyone who came to celebrate. I'll call you tonight to check in." The call ended. I sat frozen, a new kind of pain joining the tsunami of grief. My parents weren't coming. They chose Connor's birthday party over the worst moment of my life. My friend Megan arrived an hour later, having seen my desperate text. She sat with me through the night as Hannah underwent one surgery, then another. She brought me coffee I couldn't drink and sandwiches I couldn't eat. She called Michael's parents in Florida, who immediately booked flights despite their advanced age and health issues. She contacted my boss, explained the situation, arranged for bereavement leave. She did everything my parents should have done. The first 72 hours passed in a fog of grief and fear. I alternated between sitting beside Hannah's bed in the pediatric ICU, her small body connected to more machines than I could count, and making arrangements for Michael's funeral. His parents arrived, shell-shocked and gray with grief, yet still finding strength to support me. My parents called once, briefly, making vague noises about visiting when things settled down. Dr. Lawrence explained that Hannah's condition was critical but stable. They had placed her in a medically induced coma to help her brain heal. The next few days are crucial, he said gently. All we can do now is wait and monitor. So I waited. I slept in a chair beside Hannah's bed, waking at every beep or change in the rhythm of the machines keeping her alive. Nurses named Sophia and Daniel became my lifelines, explaining each procedure, each medication, each small sign of hope or concern. On the fourth day, a man in a suit appeared at Hannah's door, introducing himself as Jeffrey Williams, an attorney specializing in accidents and wrongful death. Your friend Megan contacted me, he explained. The driver who hit your husband was heavily intoxicated and has multiple prior DUIs. There will likely be both criminal charges and potential for a substantial civil settlement. I don't want to overwhelm you right now, but certain legal steps should be taken quickly to protect your and your daughter's interests. I signed papers I barely read. Jeffrey promised to handle everything, to keep me informed but not burdened. Focus on your daughter, he said kindly. Let me worry about the legal aspects. That evening, I received another call from an insurance representative named Thomas, explaining that the drunk driver's insurance company was already discussing settlement possibilities. The words washed over me meaninglessly. No amount of money would bring Michael back or guarantee that Hannah would wake up. As Hannah's first week in the hospital stretched into the second, I realized I needed to plan Michael's funeral. Alone. His parents had returned to Florida temporarily to arrange longer-term care for Michael's father, who suffered from advanced Parkinson's and couldn't be left with neighbors indefinitely. My parents had sent flowers, but explained that Connor had a job interview they needed to help him prepare for. The betrayal cut deeper each day. Planning your husband's funeral while your child fights for her life creates a special kind of hell. I chose a casket while sitting beside Hannah's hospital bed, my laptop balanced on my knees, the rhythmic beep of her heart monitor the only sound in the room. I selected flowers during her morning neurological assessment, half listening to Dr. Lawrence explain small improvements in her intracranial pressure. I wrote Michael's obituary at 3 a.m, tears blurring the screen as I tried to condense 40 years of vibrant life into 3 paragraphs. My parents finally called the day before the funeral. We're so sorry about missing your calls, Olivia, my mother said, no real apology in her tone. Connor's birthday celebration ran quite late, and then he had that big interview with the architectural firm. Your father has been coaching him all week. I said nothing, the silence stretching uncomfortably over the line. Anyway, she continued briskly, we should be able to make it to the funeral tomorrow, assuming nothing comes up. What time is it again? 2 o'clock, I replied flatly. St. Matthew's Church. That's a bit inconvenient, dear. Connor has a lunch meeting that might run long. Couldn't you have scheduled it for morning? The absurdity of the question left me speechless. As if I had selected the time for convenience rather than it being the only slot available at the church where we were married. We'll try our best, my father's voice cut in. But we might need to leave early. Connor has another commitment in the evening. Always Connor. Even now. The morning of the funeral, I left Hannah's side for the first time in 10 days. The nurses promised to call immediately if anything changed. Megan helped me into the black dress I'd ordered online, brushed my tangled hair, applied concealer to the dark circles that had become permanent fixtures under my eyes. "You don't have to do this today," she said gently. "Michael would understand if you stayed with Hannah." "I need to say goodbye," I whispered. "For both of us." St. Matthew's Church filled with people Michael had touched during his life. His college roommates flew in from across the country. Colleagues from every project he'd worked on arrived with stories of his integrity and kindness. Our neighbors brought casseroles I knew I'd never eat. Michael's elderly parents sat in the front row, leaning on each other, their grief a tangible presence. My parents arrived 17 minutes late, slipping into the second row with Connor trailing behind them. My mother wore a navy dress that seemed more appropriate for a business lunch than her son-in-law's funeral. My father checked his watch 3 times during the service. Connor looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat and checking his phone when he thought no one was watching. I delivered the eulogy with a strength I didn't know I possessed, telling stories of Michael's laughter, his dedication to Hannah, his passion for creating buildings that would stand long after we were all gone. I spoke of his love for Sunday morning pancakes and his terrible singing voice, and how he could fix anything with duct tape and optimism. I didn't cry until the end, when I promised to keep his memory alive for Hannah, to make sure she grew up knowing exactly who her father had been. My parents left during the final hymn. "Urgent call from Connor's potential employer," my mother whispered as they slipped past. Connor followed, offering an awkward half-hug and mumbled sorry for your loss that seemed directed at the floor rather than me. At the cemetery, Michael's colleagues formed a protective circle around me. Megan held my hand as the casket was lowered. Michael's mother placed a white rose on the polished wood, her hands shaking with age and sorrow. After everyone left, I stood alone beside the fresh mound of earth, unable to comprehend that Michael was beneath it. "I don't know how to do this without you," I whispered to the ground. "Hannah needs you. I need you." The cemetery worker waiting discreetly by a nearby tree pretended not to notice my breakdown. Eventually, Megan guided me back to the car, back to the hospital, back to the vigil beside Hannah's bed. The house, when I finally returned 3 days later to shower and collect fresh clothes, felt like a museum of our former life. Michael's coffee mug still sat in the sink. Hannah's backpack hung on its hook by the door, her unfinished math homework visible in the front pocket. I curled up on our bed, burying my face in Michael's pillow, breathing in the fading scent of his shampoo, and allowed myself to scream until my voice gave out. No one was there to hear me anyway. My family had made their priorities crystal clear. Days at the hospital blended together, forming a monotonous rhythm punctuated only by Hannah's medical assessments. My life narrowed to the beeping monitors, the hushed conversations with medical staff, and the constant, gnawing fear that Hannah might never wake up. I took an extended leave from work, unable to imagine focusing on financial projections while my daughter fought for her life. Dr. Lawrence became a fixture in my new reality. Each morning, he arrived at 7:30 a.m., his voice gentle but honest as he detailed Hannah's condition. "The swelling in her brain is gradually decreasing," he explained on day 14. "Her intracranial pressure readings are moving in the right direction." I clung to these small victories, searching his face for any sign that he was softening bad news or offering false hope. But Dr. Lawrence never sugarcoated Hannah's situation. "Recovery from traumatic brain injury is a marathon, not a sprint," he reminded me often. "We're looking for incremental progress." Physical therapist Daniel began passive movement therapy, carefully exercising Hannah's limbs to prevent muscle atrophy while she remained unconscious. "We're keeping her body ready," he explained while demonstrating gentle stretches I could perform between his sessions. "When she wakes up, she'll need her strength." The word when, not if, became my lifeline. Nurse Sophia worked the night shift, checking Hannah's vitals with quiet efficiency while somehow sensing when I needed conversation and when I needed silence. She brought me extra blankets for the uncomfortable recliner that became my bed and occasionally convinced me to walk to the cafeteria rather than subsisting on vending machine snacks. "Your daughter needs you at full strength," she would say firmly. "Self-care isn't selfish, it's necessary." 23 days after the accident, while Sophia was adjusting Hannah's fore, I noticed something that stopped my heart. Hannah's index finger twitched. Not the random movement that sometimes occurred, but a deliberate flexing. "Did you see that?" I gasped, grabbing Sophia's arm. We watched, hardly breathing, until it happened again. Hannah's finger moved, then her whole hand curled slightly. Dr. Lawrence confirmed what we hardly dared hope. Hannah was beginning to emerge from her coma. "This is just the first step," he cautioned. Waking from a traumatic brain injury is a process that can take days or weeks. But those small movements gave me something I'd been missing since the accident: hope. Over the following week, Hannah's signs of consciousness increased. Her eyelids fluttered. She grimaced when pricked for blood tests. One morning, while I was reading aloud from her favorite book about a girl detective, her eyes opened briefly, unfocused, but undeniably aware. I wept with joy, holding her hand and telling her how brave she was, how much I loved her, how proud her dad would be of her fight. I don't know how much she understood, but I needed to say the words. Dr. Lawrence explained the road ahead. "Hannah has a significant recovery journey. We're seeing positive neurological signs, but she's suffered serious trauma. She'll need extensive rehabilitation therapy. Speech, physical, occupational, cognitive. It's going to be comprehensive and intensive." The medical team taught me to communicate with Hannah through hand squeezes. 1 squeeze for yes, 2 for no. The first time she responded correctly to a simple question, squeezing once when I asked if she was comfortable, the entire medical team celebrated as though she'd run a marathon. For me, it was better than any marathon. It was proof that my daughter was still there, fighting her way back to me. While Hannah made slow progress, the financial reality of our situation began to surface. Even with good insurance, the medical bills mounted at a staggering rate. Each specialist consultation, each therapy session, each day in the pediatric ICU added thousands to our mounting debt. I spoke with the hospital financial counselor, who explained our options with kindness, but unavoidable clarity. "The acute care phase is just the beginning," she explained. "Rehabilitation facilities, home modifications, ongoing therapies. These costs can continue for years. Michael's life insurance would help, but it wasn't designed to cover catastrophic medical expenses of this magnitude." I began selling investments, calculating how long our savings would last, wondering if I would need to sell our home. Through it all, my parents remained conspicuously absent. They called occasionally, asking brief questions about Hannah's condition before inevitably turning the conversation to Connor's job search or their social obligations. They visited once, staying less than 30 minutes, my mother complaining about the hospital parking and my father standing awkwardly at the foot of Hannah's bed as though afraid to approach. "She looks so medical," my mother whispered, eyeing the feeding tube and monitoring equipment with barely disguised discomfort. They left without offering any meaningful support, financial or emotional. I told myself I didn't need them, that Hannah and I would manage on our own. But late at night, when Hannah slept and the hospital corridors quieted, I allowed myself to acknowledge the deep wound their abandonment had created. 6 weeks after the accident, insurance agent Thomas contacted me about the settlement negotiations. The drunk driver who killed Michael and injured Hannah had a substantial insurance policy, and his company was eager to settle rather than face a prolonged lawsuit and potential punitive damages. Given the circumstances, Thomas explained carefully, the settlement offer is likely to be significant. The driver's history of DUIs makes this a particularly strong case. I asked what significant meant in practical terms. When he quoted a figure, I nearly dropped the phone. It was more money than I had imagined, enough to cover Hannah's medical expenses and future care needs. For the first time since the accident, I felt a weight lift. We would be okay financially. Hannah would get the care she needed. I wouldn't have to choose between physical therapy sessions and paying the mortgage. That evening, Hannah squeezed my hand 3 times, a pattern we hadn't established. When I asked what she was trying to tell me, she did it again. 3 squeezes. I love you, I whispered, suddenly understanding. Is that it? 3 squeezes means I love you. 1 squeeze. Yes. I placed her small hand against my wet cheek. I love you too, Hannah. More than anything in this world. That night, I called my parents to share the good news about Hannah's progress and briefly mention the settlement. Their response would change everything. The morning after I mentioned the settlement to my parents, Attorney Jeffrey arrived at the hospital with detailed paperwork and a carefully controlled expression. We sat in the family consultation room while Hannah underwent her morning physical therapy session with Daniel. The insurance company has made a formal offer, Jeffrey said, sliding a document across the table. It's substantial, as expected given the circumstances. Mr. Wells had multiple previous DUI convictions, was significantly over the legal limit, and ran a red light in broad daylight. His liability is indisputable. I stared at the number on the page. 7 figures. Enough to ensure Hannah would receive every treatment, every therapy, every opportunity to recover as fully as possible. We need to discuss how to structure this, Jeffrey continued. I recommend establishing a medical trust for Hannah's ongoing care. This will protect the funds and ensure they're available throughout her recovery journey and beyond. For the next hour, Jeffrey outlined options for managing the settlement. A significant portion would be placed in a structured settlement, providing regular payments for Hannah's care over her lifetime. Another portion would be available immediately for current medical expenses, necessary home modifications, and specialized equipment Hannah might need during rehabilitation. What about taxes? I asked, my financial analyst background surfacing through the fog of grief and exhaustion. Settlements for physical injuries are generally tax-exempt, Jeffrey explained. But we'll work with a specialized accountant to ensure everything is properly structured. As Jeffrey outlined the financial details, I found myself thinking of Michael. He had always handled our long-term financial planning, joking that it was only fair since I managed our day-to-day finances. You keep us afloat, I'll chart the course, he'd say. Now I was navigating alone, making decisions that would affect Hannah's entire future. Take some time to review everything, Jeffrey said as our meeting concluded. But don't wait too long. The sooner we accept and structure the settlement, the sooner those funds become available for Hannah's care. I spent that afternoon researching pediatric rehabilitation facilities, calculating lifetime care costs, and consulting with Dr. Lawrence about Hannah's long-term prognosis. The numbers were staggering, but the settlement would cover them. Hannah would have what she needed. That certainty felt like the first solid ground I'd stood on since the accident. That evening, my phone rang with my parents' number. Olivia, your father and I have been discussing your situation, my mother began without preamble. We've decided it's time we visited properly. How about tomorrow afternoon? Their sudden interest caught me off guard. In 7 weeks, they had visited exactly once, staying less than half an hour and offering no meaningful support. Hannah's been showing real improvement, I said cautiously. She's communicating with hand squeezes and her eyes are focusing better. The doctors are optimistic. That's wonderful, dear. And the settlement matter you mentioned? Has that progressed? The slight shift in her tone triggered a warning bell in my mind. It's being handled, I replied vaguely. The attorney is working out the details. Your father knows quite a bit about financial matters, she pressed. He'd be happy to look things over, offer some guidance. These situations can be complex for someone without experience. I nearly laughed. I was a financial analyst with an MBA. My father was a high school history teacher who consistently made poor investment choices. I appreciate the offer, but I have professional advisors, I said. Will you be coming around lunchtime tomorrow? I should prepare Hannah. She gets anxious around visitors she hasn't seen in a while. The subtle criticism wasn't lost on my mother. We'll be there at 1, she said stiffly before ending the call. The next morning, I gently explained to Hannah that her grandparents would be visiting. They haven't been able to come much because they've been busy, I said, choosing my words carefully. Hannah deserved to know her grandparents loved her, regardless of my complicated feelings toward them. Hannah squeezed my hand once. Yes, she understood. Then she squeezed twice. No, she wasn't happy about it. Even at 9 years old, even with a traumatic brain injury, Hannah saw through pretenses. My parents arrived precisely at 1 o'clock, bearing a stuffed bear from the hospital gift shop and a bunch of bright balloons. My mother had applied full makeup and wore a smart pantsuit, as though visiting a business associate rather than her injured granddaughter. My father trailed behind her, carrying a folder that immediately raised my suspicions. Hannah, look how much better you're doing, my mother exclaimed with forced brightness. Soon you'll be up and about, back to normal. I saw Hannah's heart rate increase slightly on the monitor. Dr. Lawrence had warned against suggesting quick or complete recovery. Hannah was making remarkable progress, but faced months or years of rehabilitation. Hannah is making steady progress, I corrected gently. We're celebrating each small victory, aren't we, sweetie? Hannah squeezed my hand once. Yes. My mother placed the bear on Hannah's bedside table, then immediately turned to me. Olivia, we need to discuss some important matters. Perhaps we could step outside. Anything you need to say can be said here, I replied. Hannah's speech therapist encourages normal conversation around her, even if she can't fully participate yet. My mother's smile tightened. Very well. Your father and I have been talking about the settlement situation. We understand it's quite substantial. It's designed to cover Hannah's medical needs, I said flatly. Her care could extend for decades. Of course, my father interjected, opening his folder. But these situations require careful management. Family support structures. As they continued speaking, I noticed they kept glancing toward the door, clearly wanting a private conversation. I excused myself briefly to use the bathroom, and as I returned, I overheard their whispered conversation from the hallway. We should be entitled to some consideration, my mother was saying. We're family. Connor's business idea could really take off with proper investment. The settlement is meant to be shared, my father agreed. Family supports family. A cold understanding washed over me. This wasn't about supporting Hannah or me. This was about getting access to the settlement money. I stepped back into the room, my face carefully neutral. Hannah's getting tired, I announced. Perhaps we should continue this conversation another time. My parents exchanged glances. We'll stop by your house next week, my mother said decisively. Once Hannah's asleep for the night. We can have a proper family discussion then. After they left, Hannah squeezed my hand twice. No, she hadn't enjoyed their visit. I know, sweetheart, I whispered, stroking her hair. I know. That night, I called Megan and explained the situation. Her outrage matched what I was feeling but couldn't express. They can't be serious, she fumed. That money is for Hannah's care. I think they're very serious, I replied, watching Hannah sleep. And I think they're going to push hard. What will you do? I considered the question, watching my daughter's chest rise and fall. Whatever I have to, I answered finally. Whatever I have to. 1 week after their hospital visit, my parents arrived at my front door precisely at 7 in the evening. Connor stood slightly behind them, looking uncomfortable but determined. Hannah was asleep upstairs, a night nurse staying with her, while I dealt with what I knew would be an unpleasant conversation. Olivia, dear, my mother greeted me with air kisses that didn't touch my cheeks. The house looks, well, as good as can be expected given the circumstances. I led them to the living room, noticing how my father's eyes scanned the space, likely calculating property values and assets. Connor sat on the edge of the sofa, fidgeting with his phone. "Can I offer anyone tea?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "That would be lovely," my mother replied. "Then we can get down to business." I went to the kitchen, taking longer than necessary to prepare the tea tray. My hands shook slightly as I arranged cookies that no one would eat. Through the doorway, I could hear their muted conversation, catching phrases like reasonable percentage and family obligation. When I returned with the tea, my parents had positioned themselves on the sofa like a united front. Connor had moved to an armchair, still looking uncomfortable, but resigned to his role in whatever they had planned. "Olivia," my father began once I'd poured the tea, "we've given considerable thought to the family's situation. This settlement represents a significant opportunity." "The settlement is for Hannah's medical care," I said flatly. "Her rehabilitation could take years. The funds will be placed in a medical trust." My mother waved her hand dismissively. Yes, of course Hannah's needs must be addressed. But surely the settlement exceeds those requirements. These awards typically include substantial compensation for emotional distress, loss of companionship, and so forth. "What your mother is saying," my father continued, "is that there should be room to support the entire family. We're all affected by this tragedy." I sipped my tea, waiting for them to reach their point. "We believe," my mother said, leaning forward, "that a fair division would allocate 50% of the settlement to Hannah's care, with the remaining 50% distributed among the family to help us all move forward." The audacity was breathtaking. I set my cup down carefully to hide my shaking hands. "And what exactly would the family portion support?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. My mother smiled, clearly interpreting my question as interest rather than disbelief. "Well, Connor has developed an exciting business proposal. A technology startup with tremendous potential. With proper funding, he could really make something of himself." Connor shifted uncomfortably but nodded. "It's an app for coordinating dog walkers," he explained. "Like Uber, but for pets." "And of course," my father added, "your mother and I aren't getting any younger. We need to think about retirement, perhaps a vacation property where the family could gather. A place for healing." "I see," I said quietly. "And what about Michael's parents? Are they included in this family distribution?" My mother's expression soured. "Well, they're not direct blood relatives anymore, are they? I mean, with Michael gone." I stood abruptly. "Excuse me for a moment." I walked calmly upstairs, checking briefly on Hannah and the night nurse before entering my bedroom. From my closet, I retrieved a photo album I'd been assembling for Hannah. When she was fully recovered, I wanted her to have memories of her father preserved. I selected 2 photographs and returned downstairs. My parents and Connor were huddled in conversation that ceased when I entered the room. My mother's face bore the determined expression I recognized from childhood, the one that preceded getting her way by any means necessary. "Olivia," she began, her voice taking on the manipulative tone I knew too well. "I understand this is difficult. But family supports family. That's what we do. Your father and I raised you, supported your education, gave you every advantage. Now it's time for some reciprocity. Connor's business idea is genuinely promising," my father added. "With the right investment, it could provide for all of us in the long run. It's what Michael would have wanted, supporting the entire family." At the mention of Michael's name, something hardened within me. How dare they invoke him to serve their greed? "You're right," I said softly. "Family should support family." My mother's face brightened. "I knew you'd see reason, dear." "Before we discuss percentages," I continued, "I'd like to show you something." I handed them the first photograph. It showed Michael in his casket, his face peaceful, but unmistakably dead. I had taken it for Hannah, so that someday she would have a record of saying goodbye to her father, a goodbye she had been too injured to attend. My mother gasped. My father's face drained of color. Connor looked away. This is what 50% of my loss looks like, I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. This is what happened while you were celebrating Connor's birthday. Before they could respond, I handed them the second photograph. This one showed Hannah in the ICU, her small body connected to ventilators and monitors, her head partially shaved for the surgeries that had saved her life, her face swollen and bruised beyond recognition. And this is the other 50%, I continued. This is your granddaughter, fighting for her life while you were helping Connor prepare for job interviews. The color had completely drained from my mother's face. My father's hands trembled as he held the photograph. Connor looked like he might be sick. The settlement, I said, each word precise and cutting, will be placed entirely in a trust for Hannah's care. Every penny. It will cover her medical expenses, her therapy, her equipment, her education, her future. It will ensure that my 9-year-old daughter, who lost her father and nearly lost her own life, has everything she needs to recover and thrive. I stood, indicating our conversation was ending. True family shows up. True family sits in hospital waiting rooms and brings coffee at 2 in the morning and holds your hand when you identify your husband's body. True family doesn't wait until there's money involved to suddenly care. My mother's shock was transforming to indignation. Now listen here, Olivia. We are your parents. We deserve respect and consideration. Respect is earned, I replied quietly. And you haven't earned it. I'd like you to leave now. When you're ready to be actual grandparents to Hannah, to support us without conditions or expectations, you can call. Until then, we don't need the kind of family you're offering. Connor stood first. I'm sorry, Liv, he said, and I was surprised to see genuine regret in his eyes. This wasn't. I didn't mean for it to be like this. My parents rose stiffly, my mother clutching her purse like a shield. You'll regret this decision, she said coldly. When Hannah needs us, when you're overwhelmed trying to manage alone, you'll wish you hadn't been so stubborn. Maybe, I acknowledged. But I'd rather struggle alone than watch you treat my daughter's tragedy like a lottery win. Goodbye, Mom. Dad. Connor. I held the door open, watching them walk to their car in silence. As they drove away, I felt a strange combination of grief and relief wash over me. I had lost my husband. I had nearly lost my daughter. Now I had lost my parents too, though in truth, I suspected they had never really been mine to lose. That night, I slept in the chair beside Hannah's bed, the monitor's steady beeping a reminder that what remained of my family was still here, still fighting, still worth every sacrifice. 6 months after the confrontation with my parents, Hannah sat in her wheelchair on our back porch, laughing as she threw bread to the birds gathering in our yard. Her progress had been remarkable, though not without setbacks. The wheelchair was likely temporary, according to her physical therapists. With continued work, she would probably walk again, though perhaps always with a slight limp. Her speech had returned, sometimes halting when she was tired, but growing stronger each week. Cognitive testing showed lingering effects from her brain injury, particularly in mathematics and short-term memory, but her personality, her humor, her essential Hannah-ness remained intact. Mom, she called, pointing to a cardinal that had landed on our fence. Look at that red one. Dad would have loved to see it. We had made talking about Michael a natural part of our daily lives. His photos remained throughout the house. We shared Dad's stories at dinner, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, but always keeping his memory alive and present. He would have, I agreed, joining her on the porch. Remember how he used to make up silly names for the birds? What do you think he would have called that one? Hannah considered the cardinal seriously. Probably Sir Red Hood the Magnificent, she decided, making us both laugh. Our new routines had gradually solidified. Hannah attended therapy sessions 3 times weekly at a rehabilitation center specializing in pediatric brain injuries. I had returned to work part-time, with flexible hours that allowed me to be home when Hannah needed me. Michael's parents visited monthly, staying in our guest room and filling the house with warmth and stories of Michael's childhood. The settlement had been finalized and structured exactly as Jeffrey had recommended. A trust provided for Hannah's ongoing medical needs, with additional funds set aside for her education and future. Our financial situation was secure, though I would have traded every penny to have Michael back and Hannah uninjured. "Mom," Hannah said as we watched the birds, her voice taking on the hesitant quality that appeared when she broached difficult topics. "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa Ward ever visit? Are they mad at us?" The question pierced my heart. Despite everything, Hannah missed her grandparents. I had been careful never to disparage them in her presence, believing she had the right to form her own opinions. "They're not mad at us, sweetie," I said carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make choices about where to spend their time and energy. Grandma and Grandpa Ward have been focusing on Uncle Connor lately." Hannah considered this. "But they know I got hurt, right? And that Dad died." "They know," I confirmed, choosing my next words with extreme care. "I think sometimes people don't know how to handle very sad things. They might stay away because they're uncomfortable or don't know what to say." "That's silly," Hannah declared with the straightforward wisdom of children. "When you're sad, you need people more, not less." "You're absolutely right," I agreed, squeezing her shoulder gently. "That's a very smart way to look at it." 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived with my parents' return address. Inside was a card and a 4-page handwritten letter. The card was for Hannah, with a gift certificate to her favorite bookstore and a simple message, "Thinking of you. Love, Grandma and Grandpa Ward." Nothing elaborate, but it was the first acknowledgement of Hannah they had sent since the confrontation. The letter was addressed to me. I sat at the kitchen table after Hannah was in bed and read my mother's surprisingly vulnerable words. "Dear Olivia," she began. "I don't know if you'll read this, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. What your father and I did was inexcusable. There are no adequate words to express our remorse, but I feel compelled to try. The photographs you showed us have haunted me every day since. Not because they were shocking, though they were, but because they forced us to confront the reality we had been avoiding. While you were living through unimaginable pain, we were caught up in trivial matters and Connor's endless needs. We failed you as parents. We failed Hannah as grandparents. We have failed as human beings. Your father and I have spent many sleepless nights discussing how we reached this point, how we became people who would choose a birthday party over a daughter's tragedy, who would try to profit from a child's suffering. There is no excuse, only shame and regret. We don't expect forgiveness, nor do we deserve it. But we want you to know that your words that night changed us. We are trying to become better people, people worthy of eventually being part of your and Hannah's lives again, if you'll ever have us." Connor has also been reflecting deeply. He broke off contact with us for several weeks after that night, calling us disgusting for our behavior. He was right. He's since been volunteering at a rehabilitation center similar to Hannah's, trying to understand what you and she are experiencing. If you're willing, we would like to visit Hannah on her upcoming birthday. No expectations, no demands. Just to be present, to begin the long process of earning back a place in your lives. If this is unwelcome, we understand completely. With deepest remorse and love, Mom. I folded the letter, unsure how to feel. Part of me wanted to tear it up, to protect Hannah and myself from further disappointment. But another part recognized genuine remorse in my mother's words. People could change, couldn't they? Wasn't that what I was teaching Hannah about her own recovery? That setbacks weren't permanent, that growth was always possible? After several days of consideration, I called my mother. "Hannah's birthday gathering will be small," I said when she answered, skipping any greeting. "Just a few friends from therapy, Michael's parents, and Megan's family. 3 to 5 on the last Saturday of the month. If you want to come, you're welcome. But it needs to be about Hannah, not about fixing our relationship." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. "Thank you, Olivia," my mother finally said. her voice thick with what sounded like tears. We'll be there. On Hannah's terms. On your terms. Hannah's 10th birthday arrived with perfect early autumn weather. We set up a small party in the backyard, with decorations featuring her newest obsession, marine biology. Michael's parents helped hang streamers and blow up balloons, their gentle presence a reminder that family could be a source of strength rather than pain. When my parents arrived, precisely at 3 o'clock, the awkwardness was palpable. They carried a large gift wrapped in paper covered with dolphins and seahorses, clearly chosen with Hannah's interests in mind. Connor arrived separately a half hour later, bringing a small gift bag and an uncomfortable smile. Hannah, I said as they approached where she sat in her wheelchair, look who's here. Hannah studied her grandparents with the direct gaze that had intensified since her injury, as though she was working harder to understand the world around her. Hi, she said simply. Hello, Hannah, my mother replied, her usual confidence nowhere to be seen. Happy birthday. We've missed you very much. Hannah considered this. I got hurt, she said plainly. My dad died. I needed you. The brutal simplicity of her statement hit my parents visibly. My father's eyes filled with tears, something I had seen perhaps twice in my life. You're right, he said, kneeling to her eye level despite his arthritic knees. We should have been there. We made a terrible mistake. I'm so sorry, Hannah. Hannah studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Okay. Do you want some cake? Mom made it with blue frosting inside. Like the ocean. Just like that, Hannah offered a path forward. Not forgiveness exactly, but an opportunity to begin again. The party proceeded with surprising ease. My parents made genuine efforts to engage with Hannah, asking about her therapy and listening attentively to her sometimes halting explanations. Connor spoke with me privately, apologizing again for his role in the settlement demand. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said, watching Hannah showing my father her collection of seashells. About the kind of person I want to be. The kind of brother. The kind of uncle. It's a process, I said, neither accepting nor rejecting his apology. We're all figuring it out day by day. 2 weeks later, my parents asked if they could attend one of Hannah's therapy sessions to better understand her recovery journey. The following month, they suggested family therapy with a counselor specializing in family estrangement and reconciliation. Slowly, cautiously, we began rebuilding what had been broken, creating something new rather than trying to restore what had never truly existed. On the 1-year anniversary of Michael's death, Hannah and I visited the cemetery together. She walked with her walker, insisting on making the journey from the car to the grave under her own power. We placed flowers on the headstone, and Hannah pressed her hand against the engraved letters of her father's name. I think Daddy would be proud of us, she said simply. We got hurt, but we kept going. He would be incredibly proud of you, I agreed, blinking back tears. You're the bravest person I know. And you too, Mom, she insisted. You take care of me and you go to work and you don't cry until you think I'm asleep. I smiled through my tears, caught by my perceptive daughter. We take care of each other, don't we? As we made our slow way back to the car, Hannah asked, Are we going to be okay? Just the two of us. I considered the question seriously, giving her the honest answer she deserved. We're going to be different than we were before. There will always be a Michael-shaped hole in our lives. But yes, we're going to be okay. We have each other. We have people who love us. We're building a new kind of family. That evening, we sat on the porch swing Michael had installed the summer before the accident. Hannah leaned against my shoulder as we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Family isn't just who you're born to, I said softly, thinking of Megan who had shown up when my parents wouldn't, of Michael's elderly parents who traveled despite their health issues to support us, of the nurses and therapists who had become part of our extended circle. Family is who shows up, who stays, who loves without conditions. Hannah nodded sleepily against my shoulder. Like us, she murmured. Exactly like us, I agreed. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, I thought about the journey we had traveled in the past year. The unimaginable loss, the betrayal, the difficult road of recovery. But also the discovery of strength I never knew I possessed, the deepening of true friendships, the rebuilding of family relationships on more honest foundations. We had survived the worst life could throw at us. Whatever came next, Hannah and I would face it together, our small but mighty family of two. What would you do if your family abandoned you in your darkest hour? Have you ever had to rebuild your life after tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if Hannah's courage inspired you, subscribe to follow more stories of resilience, and share with someone who might need to be reminded that it's possible to find strength even in our most broken moments. Thank you for being part of our community, where we can share these difficult journeys together.